So we started our day going to the statue garden in Oslo. This is the entrance for it, and I apologize ahead of time about the poor audio quality here. I'm using my laptop's microphone, which is terrible. But you can see the statue garden here is beautiful. There's lots of green grass. There's obviously lots of statues, like way more than I could ever take pictures of. And there's a bridge that has a bunch of them. One heads up here, all the statues are naked. For whatever reason, it seems like the Nordic people love their naked statues because they are everywhere. There's this really cool fountain kind of towards the center of it, and then just beyond this is this big obelisk thing that has a whole bunch of people put on together. I'll show you in a second, but you can see it there in the background. It's pretty cool. There's a bird chilling out up there. See him? There he is, little guy. Throughout this park, they also have a bunch of gardens, and they're really well kept. They have little designs like this one, and they're really just nice, and there's tons of flowers I've never seen before. I'm not really a flower guy, but this was kind of cool and neat to see. We then went towards kind of the main feature in the statue garden, headed up these stairs towards this gate full of naked people, because again, apparently every statue in Norway has to be naked people, and this one is no exception. And we went through these gates into this place that has a ton more statues. I'm going to show you a bunch of them here because they're pretty cool and they're all different. And there's this one which is terrifying and looks like childhood. There's other ones here, and yeah, again, butts, because nakedness is Nordic. And there's a giant obelisk full of people all piled on top of each other. More naked people, more naked people, more naked people. And then there's this guy with his sweet beard. Piles of naked people doing who knows what. Piles of naked babies. Just weird. And then you can kind of see everything. That center walkway is where we came from originally. And then at the fountain there's a wolf throwing up 4 babies and a wolf eating babies, because that's what wolves do. We jumped back on the metro and headed back towards the center city. Small's got new shoes, and then we went over to the harbor area and got to see some boats go through and the clouds roll in. It thunderstormed a little later during the day, which was fine. And then we went up towards this castle. It has really great outlooks over the bay area, and it's pretty cool. So you just go through these doors and you can kind of see the bay and downtown Oslo, which is a nice little place. It's not a terribly big downtown, but it's pretty well appointed. This castle used to be one of 6 installations around the area that kept the harbor and surrounding people safe, but now it's just a armed forces military museum. There's nothing you can really go in here, but there's a lot of outbuildings, and this wall's fooling no one. And yeah, it's kind of cool and offers really great views of the harbor. One of the things I really dig about European cities is all the cool little ins and outs and old buildings, new things, and just all the stuff that happens at them. We then got on a boat and went over to a couple of museums that are inside of Oslo. We went to one that was about folk history, one about Vikings, and a couple others that I'll talk about in a sec. The first one was a folk one, and it has a whole bunch of religious artifacts and just general history about Norway. These are all religious artifacts from the 1500s. This one happens to be from the 1300s. And I mean, you can see the carvings on there. It's pretty cool that people were doing this stuff hundreds of years ago. This book's from 1500s as well. There's a lot of stuff with carvings. I have pictures of it all. Some of it didn't videotape well. And then there's weapons, because Vikings. It starts off with some kind of hand weapons. Then we start getting into the gun age and all that stuff. But there's tons and tons and tons of weapons, along with bears. Outside of the museum itself, there's like a living museum where they have a whole bunch of old buildings. Most of them are from around the 1700s to 1600s. Some of them are older. One of them is this stave church here, which is really cool and really old. It's from the 1300s, and they're all over Norway. There's a bunch of them. Some of them are older, some of them are newer. But this one in particular is from the 1300s. It's not overall that big, but there's a lot of really cool details, and it's just a really neat thing. One other thing I really love about European cities are these little squares. This one happens to be inside the Folk Museum, but there's just all these little squares where there's just calmness and place to breathe and live. Now, we could have gone to the Viking Museum, but it was packed, and so we kind of decided to skip it. So we went to this one, which was a ship that originally went into the Arctic. Its rudder and propellers actually were able to come up into the ship, and it was designed to be so smooth that if the ice tried to crush it, it would kind of go like a walnut and slip out of your fingers. We went to one other one, but I did not videotape it because it was weird and I didn't really want to take video of it. But that's the Royal Palace here in Oslo, and they have an electric car charger right outside. There's also a nice garden kind of area with some sculptures behind it. We then went to the National Gallery, where they actually had the coolest thing ever. They had a statue and they gave you paper and pencil and asked you to draw it. I did not because I'm not an artist, but it's really cool and there you can see the results of some people's work. And that's it for Oslo. Tomorrow we make a 5-hour drive north and start hiking.